Hello and good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Dear Mama panel discussion. This will be a conversation between Black mothers and caregivers that is centered around the unique needs of Black mothers and parenthood. As you know, the pandemic changed our way of life, and for many parents, that brought on additional financial and familiar challenges. We hope this conversation will serve as a reminder that we have a collective role in supporting families. Let's first start by introducing our panelists. So, panelists, please introduce yourselves and then how many children you have and what their ages are.
I'll start off. Hi, my name is Sean. I am the mom of a 21-year-old son named Joseph.
Thank you.
I'll go next. I am Sonia Staples. I am the mother of Jesus, a lot of children. But the ones that live in my house is 23, 22, and 18. So yeah, 2 boys and a girl.
Thank you, Sonia.
My name is Tasha Moore Elamin, and I am the mother of a 3-year-old daughter. And then I also have lots of bonus children just within the work that I do in serving teenagers and young adults in the community.
Thank you, Tasha. And Kanika.
Hello, all. I am Kanika Mcbride. I have 3 biological children, and I now have a son that I've adopted that was one of my former students. They all range from 27 is my oldest child. Then there's my 20-year-old daughter. My 27-year-old is a male. And then my daughter is 20. And then under her is my young man that my son now, that my bonus child that I have custody of. He is 17, about to be 18. And then my baby girl is 12 years old.
And I'm Amanda, and I will be moderating our time together today. And I also have a whole troop here. My son is 23, and then I have a 15-year-old, 7, and 5-year-old daughter. So it's a madhouse in here sometimes. And so I'm sure you ladies can all relate. So our first question is, how would you describe your parenting style?
I guess I would say my parenting style is kind of untraditional, very untraditional. Growing up, I was deep into depression, and I did not have the support that I needed, not because they didn't want to. It's just simply, you're in a Black family and you just don't talk about mental health and certain things. So I tried to change that narrative for my kids. And once I'd seen that they were mimicking, especially with my daughter, some of the behaviors that I did, that's what really triggered me to change the way that I was parenting. So I would say it's very untraditional.
I would say for me, my parenting style is ever changing. I think because I've learned with each child to do something different and things not to do. And so I would say the parent that I am now is a more understanding parent.
I would say for me, my parenting style is I modify it daily. I have to. I think initially it was more of a dictatorship until I figured out this isn't working for either of us. So now it's more, we are more like teammates. I'm still the what is it? The point guard. I'm still running this thing, but I think it works better that way versus me saying just do what I say to do and don't ask any questions. That was my approach initially, because that's what I was accustomed to in my own family, and we tend to do or mimic the parenting styles of our parents until we know better.
So are you still the coach? Is that what that is? You're the coach.
Always and forever, honey.
And Tasha, I know you have a baby, but did you want to add anything to that as well?
I would just piggyback off of all the ladies. I have a very open parenting style. Like I said, mimicking what they said. I grew up in a very strict household, and it was more of the be seen and not heard type of environment, and do what I say do, and there was no questions, there was no open dialogue. And so I am consistently trying to be aware of how not to be my mother, which can be a pro and a con in terms of how intentional you are, because sometimes the more intentional you are, the more you start doing what you don't want to be doing. So I try to focus on just being gracious and intentional and present in every moment, I should say that. And trying to just meet her where she is, especially at her age of 3, and just the up and down development of a 3-year-old, a toddler. But then also, I think one of the blessings of working with children for so long helps you to understand the dynamics of every child being different when it comes down to raising your own. And so I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from that work that I bring into my parenting style also, so that I'm trying to just allow her to be who she is while keeping all of my core values, at least, and principles at the forefront. And everything else kind of just is what it is.
Yeah, and I think like kind of just tying together what everyone was saying, for me, having a 23-year-old and having a 5-year-old, my son will say to me like, you would never have let me, right? Like, or you are a way different parent than you were when it was you showing up at Franklin Middle School because I was talking in the classroom, right? Like we weren't talking about how our brains work and how our feelings were and let's meditate. It was just go to bed. Like it wasn't, I'm going to sit in here and meditate with you till you fall asleep, right? But, you know, I think if you know better, you try to do better. And parenting an adult child is just as hard as parenting a 5-year-old, at least for me it is. Because all kids want autonomy over their space and they want their voice reaffirmed regardless of how old they are. And so it's been a real shift in mindset for me too, because I grew up in probably similar households to you guys where what your parents said was gospel and there really wasn't a question about it. And this generation of kids needs something different, and maybe we needed something different too. And so going into our next question, who comes to mind for you when you think about like your motherhood mentor?
For me, I would say, and a person that's not even a mother, it's actually my oldest child. I had him at the age of 16. I was a very young mom. I learned so much raising him. And I tell the girls and even my son, my 17-year-old, they need to thank him. Because of him, I am the mother that I am for them. I'm a better mom with each of them because I was able to practice and do trials with him. So we grew up together, but we talk a lot about things that we wish each of us, or either myself, just could have done different. Being a mother, a teenage mom. And so he holds a mirror to my face a lot. And then I've apologized a lot and he's forgiven me a lot. He always shares with me that he thinks that I, was an amazing mom, but because of him, that's who I would say has, I would look to for like motherhood advice, because he's created the woman that I am today, or at least helped.
That's awesome, Kanika, because I'm gonna have to agree with you on that. This one is gonna be my youngest baby, my 18-year-old. She showed me at 15 with how to change that thing around. And I promise she is my go-to reference for myself, checking myself. And yes, it is different. It's hard to, parent these adult children, especially these boys, because I'm like, what house did you grow up in? How did your little sister get it and you didn't? I know I told y'all the same thing, but that daughter of mine, I promise you, is my strength. Like, she is amazing. And I don't even know if anybody could mentor the way she is, because she's mirroring me. Just like you said, she's mirroring me, but she's that voice that was silenced in me. And I allow her to have that. And she's just dope. That's my baby.
Yes, dope daughter. Um, I would say I'm gonna take it old school and say that the mom that sticks out to me the most is Claire Huxtable, Miss Felicia Rashad, and just the way that she was so classy and funny and loving and had so many different characteristics of what I felt like from a TV personality is in regards to just the way that she embodied femininity and motherhood. But that would be more of an external example. Internal examples for me are my friendship circles, my tribe of women. The women that I went to college with, graduated with, and have still been in my inner circle, I'm like the second to last to have a child. And so we all have a scaffold, kind of like in your age range of children. And so watching them be mothers from in college and walking across the stage, almost about to give birth to like right now, in that various age ranges, that has really helped me to see the variation of what it means to be a mother, for female, for daughters, for sons, and just kind of watching them go through those different stages of life and having that be an example of good and bad in terms of how I want to encompass some of those things that I've learned from them.
Sorry, y'all, I'm pressing everything over here. I actually don't have one um, mentor. I kind of take a little bit from different women in my life. One being on this call, which is my sister Kanika, who's been, like she shared with you, she was a teenage mother, so she has a little bit more experience in this thing than I do. Took some bits and pieces from my own mom, even in her mistakes in parenting. My grandmother as well, who raised me. So there are a number of women who I've pulled different things from, and I look to as mentors.
I think like you mentioned, Sean, I feel like I have sort of a village of motherhood mentors, and like those of you who have mentioned your children, and all, you can hear my youngest child singing in conso in the background, um, but also friends. But I will have to give it to my two grandmothers. My Davis side of the family, very different than my Gordon side of the family, and I feel like I'm a nice blend. My grandmother, Grandma Davis, was like a world traveler. I mean, she was doing things when Black women just weren't. She was an RN. She was a valedictorian of her class, and like really a single parent because she was a widow when my dad was in high school, and just handling things. Whereas my grandmother on my mom's side was more of like the nurturer, homemaker, 10 kids. And so I feel like I've pulled things from all of those spaces, my former mother-in-law for sure, and my mom and stepmom too. And so I feel like I've taken a lot of good, and then those things that needed some polishing, I've just decided not to do, and just been intentional about that. Yeah. So, all right. So next question. What supports do you think have helped you to be successful in your parenting? And the question after that is, what do you think you may have needed? So you might want to touch on both of those.
I think friendships have really benefited me a lot. I think once I became transparent in my struggles in parenting with my close friends, it allowed them to do the same. And they've been a tremendous support, whether it was just venting or saying, hey, Sean, I know you're stressed out. I'll come pick them up for a few minutes, give you a little space, a little time to yourself. I think it's important to have transparency in parenting, because motherhood is not an easy job. And sometimes you feel as if you're going through things alone. You're the only one. Your kid is the only one out here showing off and getting into mischief. And once you open that window and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm going through, it allows others to do the same. And if I hadn't done that, I would have missed out on a tremendous amount of support. So I'm glad that I've always been as transparent as I am. So I would say friendships have been my biggest support.
Mine is going to be the community. My kids were always into sports and activities. And that was great as a single parent because it kind of doubled as babysitting when I needed it, just to be honest. but they, stayed active in the same community programs. And I can really say that the people from those community programs really rallied around my family. Even to this day, they support my boys. If I need anything, I can call. And, I reciprocate the same thing. I was teen mom for years. So the community definitely helped out when my grandparents were alive. They definitely helped out, but of course they were older. I probably would have needed, I would say, a little bit more of a male influence, a little bit of a stronger male influence. But I think the community did pretty good. It was just a wide array of men, and in the football world, we know how that goes, and we're gonna leave it at that. So it wasn't a lot of good role models, but they did the job and got me through. I have some respectable boys, so mine is community.
You have great boys. Thank you.
They are.
I would say the same, like making sure that you are vulnerable, like within your friendship circles, your family circles, your tribe of just people that you work with and you have connection with. Because, kind of how Shahid mentioned, like, especially within our culture, sometimes we can still operate in the mind frame of what happens at home stays at home. And as women, we carry a lot on our shoulders. We wear a lot of hats, we juggle a lot. And so it oftentimes comes as such second nature to just show up for everybody and everything in every moment without leaning on somebody for support. And I have had to be intentional about saying yes to some things. Like, if a friend asks you, do you need help with that? You need me to pick something up for you? You need me to do X, Y, and Z? My first inkling is to be like, no, I got it. But I've had to become more intentional about, you know what? Yes, I actually could use your help. Thank you for asking. And so opening up that vulnerability and asking for help so that I can lighten my load. And then one of the other things that I'll mention as a tidbit of information, just because it was new to me and because I'm still more of a newer mother, very early on, my support system was my centering group. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with centering, but so I went through MCV centering, where it's a different form of gynecological support, like how when you're pregnant and you usually go to your OBGYN and you go for your regular appointments. MCV has something that's called centering, where it's a group of women that are connected to doulas and to midwives. And so every time you have an appointment, you are with other women that are pregnant at the same time. And so within my centering class, I had about 6 women, and we were all pregnant at the same time. My daughter was born in June, so some of them birthed their children in May, some of them birthed them later in June. And so that was an immediate sense of community for me and support, because we all kind of delivered at the same time, and we were able to stay connected throughout those first few years of what it looks like developmentally, what it means to be a new mom, and all the things that you're so scared and anxious about. And we were able to call on each other, even down to, is this poop supposed to be this color, or what are they throwing up, and what if they got a temperature? And that to me wasn't something that I was educated on by my own mother or, within the health system. And so that was a jewel for me to learn about, because it helped me to feel naturally connected to my pregnancy experience, as opposed to just showing up and going to the doctor and waiting for 30 minutes only to be seen for 5 minutes. And then you don't really know your, obstetrician or your OB. So that was an immediate sense of community and support for me as a new mom.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Tasha. And Kanika?
For me, I would say definitely God has been my main support, with just always making a way out of no way. Like I said, I was a teenage mom. And so sometimes I had no clue what I was doing or how I was going to do it. And I would even say the people that he appointed to my life, like my sister Sean, we had our second child, well, my second child, her only child, at the same age, like some months apart. And we were able to really grow with each other. We were very transparent on what we thought when we made mistakes or when we did well. When we did things well, we would make sure that we encouraged each other and congratulated each other. And we always showed up for one another. And then the biggest support that I would say that I had is, or and still have today, is my mom. Like, she's just super amazing. She never spanked me coming up. And I think I took very light to that. And, even some of the other things that choices that she made, I was just like, when I get older, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to church every day, and I'm going to spank that little boy and this and that. And now when I look at her, she was so much more than what I thought, even though I always thought she was amazing, but she was always about it and never really talked about it. She didn't really know the reason and why she did not spank us. Like, she may have popped my brothers a few times, but she's never spanked me. And so when we talk about it now, and as I've shifted to the non-dictatorship, I realized that my mom was able to actually relate and had more tools in her toolkit than I thought she had, with trying to convey things to us that would translate to healthy human beings, healthy parents, healthy citizens. She didn't feel that it was necessary to inflict this type of trauma on us. So I would say definitely, besides God, my mom and Sean is definitely my biggest supporters.
I know you and I, Kanika, talk about that quite a bit, how, sometimes as parents who may spank their children, sometimes you're doing it out of a place of fear or frustration yourself. It's not really so much even about the child's behavior, and I think for me, probably my biggest supporters are my parents. I say all the time, I could not parent my children without my parents. My former mother-in-law passed away right when the pandemic started. I could not have parented Justin without her. I mean, it just wouldn't have happened. I either would have not had a job, or or I wouldn't have had kids, because even now, my parents are in their mid 70s. And so my middle daughter dances every day. So she has, much like sports, she has late rehearsals, and I would have to take my other kids with me if I had to pick her up. And they just always standing in the gap. It's nothing for me to come home and it's fruit in my refrigerator that I certainly haven't purchased, because my parents have dropped off food, or, they have said, hey, we saw, my dad knows I'm a vegetarian, so he's bringing cookbooks over here, because he's like, girl, you got to stop eating Grubhub every day. So here's some vegan cookbooks, because you don't know what you're doing, and so just always like showing up and paying attention to me in ways that I know translate to my kids. I feel like my parents are better grandparents than maybe they were as parents too, right? And so like the growth that I've had in the 20 some odd years that I've been parenting, they've experienced that over 50 years. And so, and then them not wanting to pass their generational traumas down to us, and we don't want to do that to our kids. And so I think with each generation, things have gotten better, at least in my life. Yeah, so those would be like my initial supports. But I tell people all the time, because I hear the comment, oh man, do you have a village? And I'm like, yeah, well, you got to be a villager to have a village. So you have to ask for help when you need it. When I had COVID a couple months ago, Kanika and Surprise were dropping groceries off on my doorstep. My friends, my children's friends' parents were dropping stuff off over here, because those are things that I show up for too. And so I'm happy to have you all as a part of my village as well. All right, coming up to our last two questions. So next, how do you believe schools and community agencies could better support parents during the pandemic, but also beyond? And I know you all mentioned, Tasha, I would love the information about the program that you talked about at from MCV, from when you had your daughter, because I think for a new mom, that could really be life-changing and life-affirming. But yeah, how do you think that schools and community agencies could better show up?
I think that's kind of like a hard question, because I'm the person that does not feel like it is 100% the teachers in the schools to actually do the job. Like, parents have to be that front line in order for those entities to continue what we've already put in the foundation. So that's kind of hard. You have a lot of good programs out here. you have a lot of things going on, but you also have, you know, different areas that do need a little bit more TLC than others. And it's just simply not enough resources to go around to provide what they need. These children and these parents need intensive services, and it's just not available on to some people. So I don't know. That's kind of hard. I don't know if it's, you know, still banding together to make sure that we have a stronger village. It's always better together. I know, you know, I have an organization, so even within having an organization, it's still strife there trying to get the work done. So I'm interested to hear you guys answering that because I'm trying to find that out every day.
I was gonna say for you, so, Sonia, I know that you saw a need in the community and created a nonprofit. And so I think there too, you know, for many of us that do community work, when you see a need, sometimes we are the ones that end up stepping up and being the resource.
Right, absolutely. And again, the struggle with that is, you know, going into areas that I would have never put myself into politically, you know, trying to stay away from certain things to get certain jobs done. And I just don't think that life should be that hard. I should not have to argue with you to tell you about possible solutions for gun violence simply because of funds misappropriation or because you're red and I'm blue. Like it should not matter. At the end of the day, people are still dying and nothing's happening. So yeah, it will definitely push you into different avenues. I'm learning a lot. I'm definitely learning a lot about the insides of our city. But again, we just need help. We need more help.
I would mimic kind of what Sonia was saying, just from my personal experiences. You know, right now I've transitioned into my role at the Boys and Girls Club, but I've been deeply entrenched in the mental health field for quite a long time, in the public school sector field for quite a long time, in juvenile justice for a long time, and all of those systems in and of itself have their own level of brokenness. And oftentimes working in those fields, you are trying to be the firefighter, so to speak, and putting out all the fires in such a heavy laden broken system. And so it's difficult to do that because it's so much to carry. But I'll start with some more practical things that I'm just thinking about from all my experiences in the school systems in particular. Like Sonia said, I mean, so many of our communities are in need. And when you think about the hierarchy of needs, just to be able to survive on a daily basis, some of the things that are offered at the schools are not really on the forefront for our families because they worried about how you're going to get to work, how you're going to stay safe, how you're going to pay bills. But I think the school system needs to do a better job at meeting families where they are. On average, you know, PTA members are sometimes non-working parents, two-parent homes. Our ordinary, you know, public sector families are not that, you know, not a lot of our families are two-parent homes. Most of our kids are being raised by single mothers or grandparents or extended family members. And oftentimes the school system doesn't do a good job at offering options for joining the PTA, going to our school board meetings, showing up at events in times that it works for our families that are oftentimes working two jobs, in locations that are beneficial in terms of holding them in the community as opposed to at the school when there's transportation issues. And not always having a hidden agenda and not wanting to only talk about what the schools want to talk about or what they feel like they need, but actually opening up to have a platform for parents to say what it is that they need to help their family be successful and their child be successful. And I think our school systems just do a really bad job at offering that in a way that, like I said, you can meet the needs of our families where they are. Being able to, I think I would say internally, some of the things that we talked about before, and being vulnerable enough to connect with another person. It's a fine line, you know, within the way that the world works today. You have to be very cautious about the people that you befriend and the people that you're connected to, because not everybody can be connected to your life because they don't mean you well, right? But at the same time, we can live in a house or live in an apartment and not know our neighbor. We don't live there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and don't know who lives next door to us. And so oftentimes for me, just in the general support system and what's doing better, we have to get better at being a community. To Kanika's point, if you want to have a village, then you gotta be within that village and start being in community with other people and just opening up your mouth and having conversation, because the person next door to you could very well be a support to you and have gone through similar situations, but you don't know because you just go in your door and out your door every day, and that's, you know, not something that you're paying attention to. And I think being able to form groups within your own community is important. For those moms that are working or whatever, you need to go to the grocery store, you need to pay bills, form a connection with who's in your community, so that during the day when you're working or whatever, the mom next door that don't go to work till the evening, y'all can switch off or maybe helping each other in that way. So it's just more about being in alignment with the people that are around you and using the resources that you can readily get to, but then also using your voice, especially, like I said, for our parents that are in the school systems. You might not be able to make the PTA meeting because of when it's offered or where it is in proximity to your house, but you can send an email to your principal, send an email to your city council member, your school board member, and talk about the things that you need. Oftentimes, again, within our own community, we are silent. We're silent because we're used to just dealing with what's around us and getting the bad hand that's dealt to us oftentimes and just taking it on the chin and being like, you know what, I'm gonna still do it. But you could do it easier sometimes if you just use your voice and advocate for yourself. So don't be silent and use your voice to indicate what it is that you need and the areas that are lacking, even within the health system. Like, you know, again, we go into doctor's appointments and we sit in there for 20, 30 minutes waiting on a provider to come, only for them to come in there 5 minutes, not even give you eye contact. They on the computer. Go in there and have a conversation and be like, listen, hello, I'm here, I'm a patient, I'm paying you money, I need you to ask me some real questions. And just like I said, use your voice in a way that you can advocate for what you need. And those are ways, like I said, I feel like that are more rational to do, other than the hard work of breaking these systems that are just so I don't even know the word to say. It's so many words I want to say, but
That was right. Like that.
And some of these systems are working. Some of these systems are working just the way they were designed to work, to disenfranchise Black and Brown communities, right? And so, system change takes a long time, but not everybody wants the system to change. There are some schools where, lack of resources, lack of funding. Well, we're trying to create a workforce, not entrepreneurs, not creative thinkers, not problem solvers, right? But employees that are going to show up and take this $10, $11 an hour job and then still be stuck in that same neighborhood. And so, you have to remember that too, that like the work that we're doing feels much harder than it needs to, because some of these systems were in fact created to disenfranchise our communities.
And those systems that are created in those Title V, or I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, school zones, are the literal creators of the school to prison pipeline.
But it also goes to Sonia's point. I mean, and again, every household is different. And so the way that your household is made up, your day-to-day routines, you might not have enough time in your day-to-day routines to do the extra. But nowadays, you cannot leave the educational system to do all the educating, to do the raising, to do the developmental things that are necessary to make your child be a upstanding citizen and a human being. Like, you got to do the hard work at home. And so oftentimes what I observed in working in the school system is that a lot of parents just look at the school system as babysitters. It's childcare during the day. You send them and that's it. You don't ask no questions. You don't show up to nothing. You not involved. And so you get what is given to you in the systems that were created to see you fail. But you have to know how to do what you can in your own house. Now, again, that can be limited based on the academic, efficiencies that each individual has. So you may not be able to do homework help in your house because you might have some literacy skills that you need to work on or what have you. But you have to be able to set that time aside in your house to be able to work on those things, I feel like, and set the priorities for what it is that you're wanting your child to have exposure to. Because then you're also creating, to me, a level of advocacy within themselves. If you showing them what they need, what's available, what's out here, then when they go to school, even when you can't, they'll be the first ones to open up their mouth, to the teacher and be like, that ain't what my mama said. My mama said I could be anything I want to be. And that's the environment we need to be creating, I feel like, in our households, so that the generations that are within us now that are having to experience all the deficits out here can learn how to advocate for themselves, and be connected to each other. Because that's another thing. Social media is a major thing. It's a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it prevents a lot of our children now in this generation from having social skills and relational skills and knowing how to have eye contact with somebody and have a conversation. That again, to me, is a rational solution in your own house of having time where it's no phones. We talking to each other. Tell me about your day. What you got going on? Tell me a high, tell me a low. All of those things like create patterns within your own house that is helping, like I said, your child to be more well-rounded and developed so that when they get into these broken systems, they can have their own example of what it should look like and what it could look like.
And a lot of that work too has to start with us, right? So if I'm dysregulated and I'm running around the house screaming and yelling at everybody because I'm tired and I don't know how I'm gonna pay the light bill and I got to figure out what I'm gonna feed y'all, right? And so my go-to is screaming and yelling or to hit y'all or, use whatever substance is available to me. I mean, kids sometimes do what they see, and so I can't show up and email your teacher if I'm passed out drunk in my bed because I'm so stressed out and dealing with anxiety and don't have insurance to see a doctor and all of the things. And so, I think we as moms don't always recognize everything in my life prior to having my younger two kids was about my oldest kids. Like it was about, I'm going to be asleep in the dance parking lot. If, if we go into the dance competition and we'll figure out these bills when I get back, and I had to recognize my own needs had to come first. Or I'm no good to you guys. And so I have to do things like therapy. I can't always depend on other people the way I can depend on myself. And so recognizing some of those real truths too. And again, asking for help when you need it. I wish I had like a postpartum doula when I had my 7-year-old because she was in NICU for 2.5 months. That would have completely changed my whole experience if I had someone like caring for me. But I have to be okay with people caring for me and me not feeling like I have to carry everything too. Sean and Kanika, did y'all want to add anything to that about what schools and community agencies could do to better support parents?
The only thing that I was going to say, but Tasha hit it out the park. Thank you, Tasha. Is that the importance of building a genuine rapport and relationships. I think everything falls under that umbrella. But she even hit on that. You spoke very well and you said everything that I wanted to say. So I have nothing else to add.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I took over. I can get on the soapbox. You asked me the right question.
I love it. I love it.
I definitely agree with that. I say this most times that healthy relationships, authentic relationships is the number one proven factor in decreasing behaviors, increasing positivity. Like it's just authentic relationships. So I would say that, but I thought of so many things while I was sitting here, but then I guess to start at a level where we actually can be impactful is, like Tasha said, is to meet parents where they are, meet families right where they are. PTA meetings or, parent-teacher conference, they need to start at the front door, in the living room, FaceTiming on phones. Like we have to meet, because if you think about it, as Amanda said, they don't know because they had no one to show them. So now we're expecting them to do something that they have no clue about. And so kids are just showing up their best selves. And so we just started reading a book. That's why my daughter keeps calling my phone, because I was trying to get her to bring it down here. If My Teacher Knew. And so for me, I remember my mom coming up to the school saying to my teacher, like, I didn't send her here because the teacher told her, like, she comes to my class and sleeps all the time. And long as she quiet, I told her, I don't care. My mom was like, well, I didn't send her here to sleep. I sent her here to learn. But not did you, that's okay. No worries. She wasn't concerned about me at all. She could care less. She signed up to teach, and that was it. And so the other thing is our new teachers, our teachers coming in, they need to know that this isn't just a teaching job anymore, not curriculum, not academics. It's relationship building, it's social skills, it's being that mama when their mama not there. Because if my teacher knew that my father was locked up and I was helping to raise my little brother, then she probably would have said, go ahead and sleep a little longer, and I'm gonna give you this when I go on break. And so just being more empathetic. Yeah, teachers, they can't do it all, but know that when you sign up for this profession to work with kids, that we're changing generations, we're impacting the world. And so it can't just be about academics and SOLs. And if you come in building those authentic relationships, they're gonna knock it out the park with the academics because they know that you care. And so that's what, if I could say that to add something, to do different, to help our families, that would be it. And then resources, I think just collecting data to redline us or to, make us the statistic is one thing, but gathering those numbers to be impactful and to actually start sending those resources into those communities will be another thing. So when they're gathering the information, just make sure that we're doing something with it positively that's going to impact our families.
And I think using that information to create preventative programs, much like the things that we do on our team at SCAN is about, in Boys and Girls Club, is about prevention, right? We want to prevent kids from ending up on drugs, from ending up with early death, from ending up, committing crimes and all of those unhealthy outcomes that we know happen to our babies because we're all in the community, right? And so I think for me, I would like to just see, and that wasn't even something as a teacher that I even knew existed, like prevention. I never heard of that. I'm like, what are you talking about? We got these babies here. My job is to see them, to love them, because unless they feel seen and loved, all the academic stuff, they don't trust me. They don't trust school. They haven't had healthy school experiences. Maybe some of their parents haven't had healthy school experiences, right? And so we having to dig through that too and recognize that I'm here trying to build organic relationships, safe relationships first, before we can even get into the academic space. And so I think the more that we can talk about prevention, right? And then if you do stumble or you do fall, there being programs and resources accessible for you to rebound from that too. That some things shouldn't be a life sentence should be a life sentence. Anything beyond that, you should be able to rebound from that, re-enter the community, be a mentor, find employment, find opportunities. And I think that those are some spaces that I would say we could do a better job and that we don't do enough of, once something has happened, once the trauma has happened, well, now we got to go into reactive spaces when we could front load some of these resources so that we don't get into that. All right. So our last question, what advice would you give to a new mom?
I just wanted to, can I backtrack for a second? Because I just wanted to speak on the prevention. That prevention is everything. Through the trainings that I'm going through, I'm finding more that had I had prevention, I probably wouldn't be as deep into depression as I was during my teenage years. Just one small ounce. If I just had someone to ask me what's wrong, instead of highlighting what I did bad, then that would have been that 1 ounce that could have gave me some hope that somebody felt something about me. That prevention piece is huge. So thank you for hitting that, because these trainings and everything can save lives if we just care. That's all we got to do is care.
Yeah, and I'll say to you, Sonia, like I keep a picture of my husband from his kindergarten graduation, like on my desk, because I know that's why I do this work. It's for those kids that had so many things happening at home that I can see it. I can look at the ACE questionnaire and literally walk through the timeline of
Right.
mental health, substance use disorder, homelessness, like all of the things that could have been prevented if there had been any stability at school, even not even at home. We can't control what happens at home, but
Right.
just with a stable school environment and one teacher that said, what's going on with you? You're really smart, but we notice that you're doing, your behavior is changing, right? And really digging into those layers, because again, a part of me being in this work is making sure those things don't get passed on to my own kids. Same thing
Right.
for you. And so I don't think we hear enough about like what the prevention piece looks like and the power that providing tools before something has happened could have in our community.
Absolutely.
And I was gonna ask the backup too, because there's another thing I had thought about in terms of the preventative and a way to be more connected to the community. Again, it's a system that has been created and there's such a large gap of what you can physically do. But if we were to have enough funds and enough resources within our schools that would adequately allow school counselors to function in their real roles, our school social workers to function in their real roles, then that way our babies can be wrapped around in the services that they are afforded or supposed to be afforded, in a way that they can have that mental health connection, that one-on-one rapport, that caring adult that will take time to ask you, to Kanika's point, like, I see that you've been sleeping in class, lately. Like, what is it that I can do to help you as a school counselor, as opposed to that responsibility having to be put on your teacher because she has, 19, 20 other children that she has to be responsible for during the day. So that again speaks to, the parents being able to advocate at the platforms that you're given, to be able to say, where are these funds going to, these dollars and these resources, so that our schools can be outfitted with the proper resources to be able to have mental health services provided in every school. I have no idea how they decided which schools were going to get services like SCAN or Child Savers within the building, but every school building needs that type of resource, not just the ones that they have selected. And what can we do about that? And the other thing that I was going to mention is, especially for our families that have male children, our school systems are predominantly female oriented, and they go from one female oriented household to a classroom with female teachers, and there's no males. What can we do within the community to start making the educational system, the mental health system, the mentoring system more attractive to guys, so that they can be in these roles and help support our young men? And that's another big gap that I feel like is missing. And we know how women are more nurturing and more geared towards operating off of the heart as opposed to the mind and the pockets, of a man. And we know that those fields don't pay enough money. But what can we do about that? And like I said, what can make it more attractive so that more men are connected to these roles so that they can support our young men? And in terms of advice, so that we will keep going to, I would just say, as a new parent, that the advice that I've always been given from every parent, there's no handbook, there's no right time to become a parent, there's no right or wrong answer. Not every child is going to be the same, whether they came out of you or not. They are going to be their own individual person, and know that you cannot have a cookie cutter way of raising a child. You have to be able to know their own personalities. You have to be able to know what it is that they need. And it might be easier said than done, because I feel like, we're all actively trying to pursue this. But you have to be intentional about recognizing where your wounds are as a parent. When you stepping in to raise somebody else, know how you're parenting from a reactive standpoint, what triggers your child is bringing out of you based on the things that they say, the things that they do, and how you react to that. And knowing if it comes from a personal wound that you got, like, oh, I need to check myself, so that you can get your own services, you can get your therapy, you can have a confidant, a person or something that you can talk to so that you know that you're not parenting, like I said, your child based on your own damage and your own hurt and your own wounds, and be accountable for those things. If it doesn't, it's not easy to not be reactive in that way. But if you happen to react out of anger because of a trigger, be accountable for that and apologize. Go back to your child and say, you know what? I didn't realize that you brought something out of me just now from what I went through when I was younger, and I apologize for reacting in that way. And do your work in terms of healing yourself, so that based on how you were raised and the environment you were raised in and the trauma that you might have had your own self, do your work as much as possible so that you can be a healed, whole person while you're raising another human being.
Let the church say amen.
Amen. I would say to be the parent that you felt that you needed when you were coming up. Also, to attach yourself or align yourself with great parents and to learn from your mistakes. And as Tasha said, don't ever hesitate to apologize to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Mine would be to give yourself grace. You're going to make mistakes. And like Tasha said, there is no blueprint to this thing. God knows I wish there were. And another point that she raised that I was thinking about earlier, even before we got on here, is that so often we think when the child is in our womb, we're thinking how this kid will be. When this kid comes, she's gonna look like me. She's gonna act like me. They're their own person. They have their own belief systems, their own thought processes, things that trigger them. My son, for instance, he reacts and responds to things that don't even faze me. And for the longest time, and sometimes to this day, if we're being honest, I'll say, do you have any of my blood in you? Because he's just so different from me. But as I matured and as I grew older, I had to realize he's his own separate entity. I just was the canal that gave birth to him. But allow your child to be who they are. Mm-hmm. Enjoy the process. Sit back and learn who they are with them. It is a process, and if you're so gung-ho on creating them and trying to push them and mold them into who you think they should be, you'll miss an amazing journey. Mm-hmm. I wish I had known that earlier, because as a young parent, there are things that I missed out on trying to groom him into who I thought he should be. My son played every sport known to man and couldn't play any of them because that was something I was trying to force him to do, because I thought as a boy, you need to be playing football, you need to be playing baseball. And he learned some things, the discipline that comes with playing sports and things of that nature, but that was never his thing. Mm-hmm. And so had I known better, I could have used that time more valuable in honing in on his skill sets and things that he was passionate about. But yeah, grace is the biggest thing. You're going to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. It's you're learning this thing together, you and your child.
And if I could add one more thing, listen.
Absolutely.
And actively listen. Be intentional about not being, just because you are the authoritative person and you're the parent, you don't know everything, because we all still learning, we all still figuring things out. And so just because you feel like you have the answer and your child is too young to have it, that's not true, because they are, like, she said, like, they're their own individual, and sometimes our children can be wiser in areas than we are. And sometimes they can be communicating to us in ways that are not verbal also, in their behaviors or their decisions or the things that they do, and we're not paying attention. We're just so busy talking and fussing and doing, but we don't listen actively to what they're saying and allow them to have their voice. Mm-hmm. And so I think that would help in terms of parenting, because you will know what your child needs if you just listen to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with everybody. Be the teacher, but remain teachable. That's all I can tell you.
Absolutely. I know my kids I will say to them, mommy's not, and all of them will say perfect, because I don't know everything, and it's real hard to swallow that pill sometimes, that your children may actually know more than you about something. I'm not an expert in TikTok, but I guarantee you Ava could come in here and TikTok all across this room. And you know what I mean? They live in a whole different world where we live in. And so, my advice to a new mom, I have something I saw on Facebook yesterday that I want to read to close out. It's real quick if I can find it again. Would be to ask for help, number one. As early in my parenting, I would say, like, I heard you don't talk about what goes on in our house outside of this house, right? And now I cringe to think about that because I'm like, well, what if something is happening to my child and I've told them not to talk to the school counselor or, or somebody else? And so, I would say to ask for help because it's available. If I had known about that motherhood program, maybe I wouldn't have been so lonely in my pregnancy because much like you, Tasha, where my younger girls are concerned, my friends are grandparents. So they like, I don't want to keep your 5 and 7 year old. You know what I mean? You be 40 some years old. They going on vacation, and so nobody, and my mom said, nobody told you to have all these kids. She tried to live her best life in retirement. And so, just making sure you asking for help, creating that village for yourself. And that village might not be your biological family. It might be your friend group. It might be, persons at school. Also find friends that aren't just all on your level. And that was another thing that was hard for me because, we all doing about the same job and in the same line of work. And, you can't grow when everybody's at the same space. And so like I've seen you, Sonia, reaching out, doing a lot of work with like the governor's office and different spaces. And would you have thought 5 years ago that you would be doing that? So, making sure that
I
you're
didn't
not.
think this morning that I would be doing it.
And so, I looked at your Facebook page. I was like, hold on. But, making sure that you are reaching forward, but also reaching back. There are a lot of students, because I taught at Armstrong for a good chunk of my career, who are now parents, and they asking me, how much medicine do I give the baby? And, because I'm reaching back in their parenting and saying, girl, you better stop beating that baby every time, he spills something on the couch, right? I'm joking, but I'm not joking, and so making sure that you're not just saying, where you are and with folks that are, where you are. And so I saw this yesterday. Someone said that when she was a teen parent, that someone had given her this advice, and I wrote it down. But she said, you can do it and you will do it. From before you were born, you had everything in you that you need to get to where you want to go. You don't need hope because you've already got it. Everything you need is already within you. And I said, I need to keep that as a reminder for myself that I am the strategy and the tools, and I have all of those things already in me. So I want to thank you guys for showing up today and for being so transparent about your experiences with motherhood. I'm not sure if anyone has anything else they want to share, just as a closing remark.
I just wanted to know, when is this next therapy session? Is it same place, same
Right.
time?
We need to be having this motherhood circle. But we got a time. We have a time set now. So Tuesdays at what?
Right.
30.
That's right.
Yes.
It was so nice meeting all of you.
Yes,
And
likewise.
I really enjoyed this time with you all. And I've
Likewise.
learned things as well.
Same here. Same here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Amanda,
Yes.
for inviting me. Tasha, we'll talk.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you
You
guys.
ladies
Have a
be
great
safe.
one. You too.
Thank you.
Bye.